So this week's learning exercises looks at how a disease might spread in an epidemic. So we're going to look at some code that's already written and then use that code to create objects and stuff. So our main job, our task is to learn how to create objects in BlueJ and call different methods in those objects. So a little background, we're using a model for disease spreading that is called the SEIR model. It's short for susceptible, exposed, infectious, and recovered. The idea is that a person is first susceptible to the disease, and at some point they're exposed to disease. Um, and when they contact with another infected person, they're exposed to it. And there's a chance they might become infected from that. And then once they're infected, there's a chance they'll recover. So we go through this phase. And in our graphs, we'll use the same sort of colors. White will be initially when we're exposed, we'll go to green, and infected yellow, and then recovered will be black. So to get started, we're going to open up this project. It's attached at the bottom of this learning example, and we're going to. It's learning exercise 4 simulator. So let's go and download that and open that up in BlueJ. So I'm going to go open up the project, find that project that I've downloaded and unzipped, and open it up. So hopefully you're seeing a number of classes: disease, population, disease simulator, person display, population display, data table, and basic statistics. And we will only be using these top 3 classes in our little example today. We'll be ignoring these. So we'll be looking at these. So let's see what we need to do. So we've got that open. So let's talk about the first class, the disease class. So this is a sample of a disease. So your first thing you want to do is, again, there'll be a set of tasks highlighted in red, which describe exactly what you want to do, because there's lots of extra information in this lab. This lab comes from a really cool workshop an assignment created by another professor, and so we're using some of it because I really like this. Some nice example code. So I've highlighted task 1 here. Create a new disease object using the default disease constructor without any parameters, and give this the name flu. So we're going to go back into BlueJ here. I'm going to create a new disease object, so I'm right click, and again there's 2 constructors here. I'm going to use the default one without any parameters, and I'm just going to call this flu, and I'll create a flu object down here. Now it asks me what are the attributes of the disease object I created. So again, I can just click on this, open it up, and it has an infectivity, incubation period, and it has values for these 4 variables. So you've got to note those 4 variables and what their initial values are. Just submit a list of the 4 fields and their initial values. And then it talks some about these different fields. What's the incubation period? What's the latency period? So you can read up what those periods actually are and how the simulation actually works. So task 2 is to create another disease object called pox. So we first created the flu, now we're creating the pox using a constructor with parameters. Okay, so I'm going to go over here, create a new disease. Now I'm going to choose this second. So there's 2 constructors. One sets a bunch of default values, but now we're going to not use the default values. We're going to set our own values. So I'm going to select this. It asks for a name. I'm calling this one pox. And it asks for these values. So I want, 7% of the individuals come in contact with which should contract these. So infectivity is 7. And I don't put a percent. I just type in 7 there. Once a contact disease, the person should show symptoms in 5 days. That's the incubation period is 5 days. So incubation period is 5 days. After becoming infected, and becomes infectious for 2 days. That's the latency period, and remain infectious for 3 days. So 2 days and 3 days are my last two things. So now I have two objects here, the flu and the pox. Okay, so we've learned how to create objects with two types of constructors here. Now we're going to look at the population class and do some things with that. So I'm going to create a new population object named Duluth. And again, so I'm just going to go and use this constructor without any parameters. I'm just going to name this Duluth. We're simulating a population in a city or something like that. Okay, so I created a Duluth population. Now, how many people are in the population? So again, you can click on this. Now this is, eventually we're going to set up a grid there's going to be 25 rows by 25 columns. So in that, and each spot in the grid will be one person. So there'll be 25 by 25 people in our thing. So again, you've got to calculate. So what is the total amount? 25 times 25 of the size. Now, what is the value that is returned in the call get percent susceptible method, and then get percent exposed method? We're going to look at those. So again, how do we call methods in an object? So here's my object. I can right click on it and say get percent susceptible, and that's going to be 99.84, basically 839%. There. And then the other thing I want to do is get percent exposed. So get percent exposed. That's 0.16%. When a simulation starts, everyone's susceptible except one person in the middle of the simulation who's going to be exposed. We're going to expose one person to our illness, our disease, and that. So again, one person out of our total number of people is just 0.16%. So that's how we can call methods and return values, see what values they are within these. So again, remember those values and submit them with the population size. So at the end of this, you're going to have to submit the answers to all these questions. So turn in, so see the task above, submit all the answers to the questions. Okay, so I've done task 2, and I've created my population and done that, and done task 4. So I'm done through task 4. Now finally I'm going to create a disease simulator class, and work with that. So I'm going to create one more class, a disease simulator. Now there's only one constructor and it requires parameters. I have to type in the disease and the population. So I want to use the flu here, make sure, yep, I want to use the flu and Duluth. So I can type in flu here, but another nice way to do it in BlueJ is I can just drag or click on this object. So rather than typing in Duluth, I can just click my mouse there to the population and click on a population object, and it'll put Duluth in there automatically. I'm going to give these both names. I'm going to call this, let's see, do we tell you? A string parameter named, so we're just going to call it sim1. Now this expects a string, so I have to put it in quotes, quote, double quote, sim1, double quote. It has to be a string variable, so I have to put it in quotes here, and then create that. So here's my disease simulator. Now the disease simulator has a graphical user interface, and we can show that saying show GUI. So I'm going to go into my simulator and choose the whole bunch of methods here. I'm going to choose the show GUI one, and then they should pop this up. Sometimes, depending on how your windows are set up, this might be hidden behind other windows. So make sure you find it and display it here. So this shows that all the white squares are susceptible to the illness of the disease. One is exposed. So this is our one exposed person. And that, so remember when we just a little bit ago we said the percent of people susceptible, percent of people exposed. That's what we have here. Okay. Now I'm going to run my simulator. Let's see, there's a simulator. Okay, task 6. I'm going to call the step method and see what happens. It simulates a single step of my world here. So I'm going to go into BlueJ, go to my disease, and do a step. So under my disease simulator, not my disease simulator, I'm going to choose step. Nothing's probably going to happen. I'm going to step again. I'm going to have to step a couple times before something happens. My person was exposed for 3 days, and after a couple days, it then became infectious. And so now it can infect other people. So I can step again and see what happens. Now, this clicking, okay, let's see, go back here. So call step method. Single days, what happens? Nothing. Call step again. How many times you have to call step before something happens? Why? Okay. Now then, once we've got that working, we can use step for a number of days to simulate 20 days. So now we're going to try that. So again, run my disease simulator. Now there's two. There's step here. There's a step for days. I'm going to run that and say run this for 20 steps automatically. And I'll step through my little simulation here for 20 days. Now we can do this get percent infected and get percent exposed to see this is in our population object and what the values are. So I can go to my population object, go to Duluth, and get percent exposed. So almost 2%, 1.9 people have been exposed. And the other one was the get percent infected. Infectus is almost 0.5%. So again, this is just another way we can call methods to access information within our classes. So go through this. So we've just run these steps. We ran it for 20 days. Now we're going to reset the Duluth population to its initial condition. So let me show both. So if I go to Duluth, there's one more method here that we're going to try called reset that resets the population so only one person's infected. Now we're going to create a new simulation object using the pox. Remember, we did the flu and Duluth using the default parameters. Now we're going to use the pox one and then run that for 50 days. So I created this one simulator, simulator 1. I'm going to make a new simulator, new disease simulator. And I'm going to do, for the disease, I'm going to click on pox. Oops. And then for the population, we'll still do Duluth because we just reset Duluth. And I'm going to call this Sim 2. Oops, I always forget to put the quotes around this string. Okay, Sim 2. Now I'm going to show the GUI for this. So again, now I actually have both GUIs up here and running. So this is my new GUI, and I'm going to run this simulation for 50 steps. 50 steps. Now, this time when I ran my simulation, I didn't get any infections. And every time you run, there's some randomness and some percentages built into these simulations. So you don't always get the same results when we run these simulations. So I'm going to reset my population again and try running it again. And now I'll see some infection, and then it dies out. It died out around 30 days. I can reset my population again and try to run this simulation again for 50 days. So again, each time you get different infections depending on how the random numbers worked. So again, reset the population, run the simulation several times to see how the results vary each time. So now we can actually, the disease simulator is actually set up and can run the simulator multiple times and different things. So that's what we want to finally do is we want to run the simulator for 5 trials of 25 days each. So I'm going to run this, let me bring up my simulator. I'm going to reset my population one more before I start this. And now I'm going to run my simulator, my newest simulator. So run this now. So far we've been just doing step and step for an int number of days and just steps. And now I'm going to run a set of trials. I can say run a set of trials. I'm going to do it each trial for 25 days, and let's run 5 trials. And we can run through this. It'll run one simulator for 25 days, and now it starts another simulator, runs that for 25 days, runs another simulator, and then runs another simulator, and runs another simulator. So we'll run the simulator again and again, and then it'll show me the results of each of the simulations, and then the average of each of these values. And then there's this total value, number of people exposed, infected, or recovered. So the total number of people, and then the average there. So we want you to run this for this many days and report the average of this values. Now you're free to play with this simulation some more if you want. It's kind of interesting to look at this simulation and try to run it. Also, you can run this first simulation again multiple times. I'm going to redo my population and run this first simulation multiple times. I'm going to run 10 trials of 50, trials of 50 days. Sorry, I get this right. And I'm going to run 10 of them. Maybe I'll run 100 of them. So try different values here. So again, it'll run through these trials. Now, if you have this GUI up, it's going to take a while. If you just hide the GUI, it's going to go much faster as you run, as you go through this, and eventually it'll pop up. So it ran 100 trials here, and here's all the results of these 100 trials, and then the average infectious number of people infected at the end. Okay, so again, you just have to run one for 5 trials of 25 days each and report the results here of that first infection, or the pox one that we were working at. Here's some further reading if you want, but just submit the answers to this. Now, in the assignment for this unit, we're going to look some more at the actual code for this simulation and see a little bit of how it's written.